Okay, we're going to make sure that we have sound before we proceed. We have some concern that there may not be sound on the system, so we'll wait just one moment to confirm that. Wonderful. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Infrastructure Oversight Board meeting held on Thursday, June 26, 2025. We will have a session of public comment. If any member of the public would like to speak, you'll have a total of 3 minutes. If you're here in person, please fill out a comment card. And if you'd like to comment over the phone, the number is 818-238-3335. And we will connect you when the public comment period begins. So we will start with a flag salute. And could we have the roll call?
Armin Avazian.
Present.
Maria Coronado is currently absent. Dwayne Gilmore.
Present.
Linda Bussin.
Here?
Jean Schomburger.
Here.
Shane Weber.
Here.
And Colin Hoffmeister.
Aye, here.
Okay, and now we move to announcements.
Madam Chair, board members, no announcements for this meeting.
I guess it's summer. Any public comment?
There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, and we will move on to consent calendar, which is the approval of the two meetings that we had, the minutes of those meetings held on April 24th, 2025 and May 13th, 2025. Did everyone have a chance to review those minutes? And do you have any comments, questions, or changes? Okay, then we'll entertain a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you. And any second?
Second.
Thank you. Could we have the vote, please?
Armin Avazian.
Yes.
Dwayne Gilmore.
Yes.
Shane Weber.
Yes.
Colin Hoffmeister.
Yes.
Jean Schomburger.
Yes.
And Linda Bussin.
Yes,
Okay, that's 6 yeses. Motion passes.
thank you. And reports to the board.
Yes, thank you very much. Madam Chair, board members, this is really an exciting report for me personally. Our pavement management plan update. If you saw the report that I provided to council as part of our annual budget presentation in May, at the end there, I had an unveiling of a pavement condition index for our entire city of 73. And to emphasize how great that is, you know, my 30 years of experience with cities and paving is a very near and dear thing to my heart. A 73 is really a great sweet spot for Burbank. I always like to say the council and the residents were very wise to propose and move Measure P because it found the funding to do these types of improvements along with all the other parts of our capital program. So we appreciate your support, and without any further ado, I believe I'm going to call up our principal civil engineer, Artin Megadician, who is the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, behind the curtain that's taking care of all of our pavement in our roadways and alleys citywide. So Artin, thank you. Mic on? Is the mic on?
Okay, it's on now.
Okay.
So sorry about that. So good evening, Chair Besson, Vice Chair Schomburger, and members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity, allowing us to present our 2025 PMP Pavement Management Program update. And I'm Artin Megardici, I'm Principal Civil Engineer with the Engineering Division of Public Works. And here we have today with us Vivek Jha with Nicholas Consulting Engineers, the city's consultant that has helped us with the 2025 payment condition assessment and the report. Okay, so what is a payment management program? It is a budgeting tool that assists us make cost-effective decisions, and it answers the following questions. What does the city own and maintain in the street network? What condition are those streets in? And what repairs are needed and when? And what is the cost to maintain those streets? So we have 280 centerline miles of roadways, of which 50 miles are alleyways and 230 miles are streets. And the software that we use for our PMP program is Street Saver, which is an industry standard software used by a lot of local agencies in California. So a pavement management program is used to develop a multi-year capital plan. It provides a proactive pavement maintenance to ensure the full life cycle of each street segment is achieved. And it also is measurable and transparent. Actually, we are finalizing our 2025 report, and we will be publishing it to the city's website in the next couple of weeks. And that way, everyone, it will be available to the public. Everyone can access it and check their rating for their street segment. And it provides a status report for the streets. So how is the pavement condition assessed? Streets are assessed by trained technicians. And we did two types of assessments this time. We did windshield inspections, and we did performed walking inspections. And they're both performed per the ASTM D6433 standards. So for the windshield inspection, we perform those for streets that are relatively in a good condition so that there are no cracks to measure. And the walking inspections, the technician from NCE selects 10% sample that best represents that street segment, and they, as seen in the picture, they measure the area of the cracks and the severity of the cracks, and they input that information into our Street Saver program to get that pavement condition index rating for that segment. And conditions, our assessments are conducted approximately every 3 to 4 years. So the last time that we had completed ours was in 2021. This slide shows a few various types of cracks. We have alligator cracks, which show basically base failure. We have block cracking. We have longitudinal cracks. We have patches, and some of those patches have been done by utility companies, and if we notice that they're failed or damaged or in need of repair, we check the permits that we have to see which utility company it was done by, and then we notify them to return and repair the patch. So this slide shows the 4 different condition categories. We have very poor, fair, and condition category of good to very good, which goes from 70 to 100. And basically, it's corresponding to the ratings of 0 to 100, and those numbers are the pavement condition index rating. 0 being a failed street, and 100 being recently paved brand new street. So the next 4 slides, we will be looking at those 4 different condition categories. This one is a pavement condition index of street segment in the good to very good condition category with a PCI rating of 100. And examples of this street would be Victory Boulevard from Verdugo to the city limit at the city of Glendale, which we just completed paving this month. Next is a street segment in the fair condition category with a PCI rating of 65. As we can see, some weathering has taken place and the longitudinal cracks are starting to develop. And an example street would be Verdugo Avenue from Victory to Lake Street. Next is a street in pavement condition category poor, and as we can see, there's longitudinal cracks, block cracking, and alligator cracking starting to develop. And an example street segment would be Hilton Drive from Eaton to Camp Ridge. And this is a street in the very poor condition category with a PCI of 13, basically a failed street that needs to be reconstructed. And an example street would be Haven Way from Brace Canyon to Joaquin, which we are improving this year. So this slide shows the sample deterioration curve, or what we also call the life cycle curve for each street segment. So we have over 2,700 street segments in our network, and each one of them has one of these curves. And it is unique to each street because it depends on the location of the street, the traffic index of the street, and the subgrade that's under the street. And that $4 to $5 is basically showing, well, first, I would like to explain the horizontal axis also. That's time in years, and there's no numbers because it is unique to each street. And that $4 to $5 is basically showing that if we wait until the street is failed, it would cost us 4 to 5 times more than it would have when the street was in a relatively fair or poor category, which we could repair by thinner resurfacing methods or even crack sealing and slurry sealing. So we have about 48 centerline miles of arterials, 37 centerline miles of collectors, and 144 miles of residentials. And in this slide, we're looking at the PCI ratings from 2017, and at the time, we were at a 57 overall network PCI condition. In 2021, we increased that PCI substantially to 65, and that's a 14% increase, which is a substantial increase in terms of PCI. And I will show you in the next slide where we were. So in 2021, we were in the fair category, and by that time, we had already received the Measure P funding. So with that infusion of Measure P funding, we were able to repave more streets. And this was the goal at the time, is to get from a PCI of 65 to a PCI of 73 in 10 years. Which we achieved 5 years earlier in 2025. So that's the good news. Oh. But actually, a good point. So we can look at each item, each of our functional classes. So the arterials are at a 75, collectors are at a 76, and residentials are at a 79. And the alleys are at a 44.
And Arden, if I may. So the interesting thing about that slide, something that you've heard in our annual CIPs, the past 4 years, I believe, there was a single segment alley that we did as a pilot. I think the next year we did 5, and I think last year we did 20 segments. And that's important because, as you know, as you saw from, or see from our PCI, the alleys are in bad shape. And that's mostly because of the use and the prioritization of all the citywide streets to hit the arterials and our residential first. But the gains that we've made in the residential areas and the arterials allow us to bring some money into those alleys. So I know since 5 years, we've had a good handful of alley complaints. And you might recall we focused on alleys where there is typically pedestrian traffic as well. So I talked long enough to let us sink in that 73, so thank you.
Okay, so we're at 73 now in the last condition category of green, which is good to very good. And so how do we compare to other cities? Actually, in 2021, we were below the state average of 66, I believe at the time it was. Now the state is 65, so we're above the 65, and we're even higher than our neighboring cities of Pasadena and City of Los Angeles. So just a quick background, in 2010, 2011 is when we started our 10-year first cycle repaving project, and started with 2 zones. We had divided the city into 20 maintenance zones, and the goal was to repave the poor and very poor streets in 2 zones every year for the next 10 years at the time. And we had, I believe, about $800,000 budget to address all of the streets, which what wasn't possible, so we had to design and construct to the budgeted amount and then move on to the next year's street. So we basically addressed the worst of the worst streets at the time. And in 2020, 2021, we completed the 10-year cycle, and it's that time we had actually received the infusion of Measure P funds, so we were able to do a lot more paving than the first phase of that project. And this is zooming into those 2 zones, 19 and 20, and just the actual location map from the project showing that we were able to repave every single street almost. And those were the streets that were in a poor and very poor condition. So 10-year cycle was completed, and then we had the Measure P funds, and our goal was to reach the 73. So we decided to implement a much more aggressive paving program. So we decided to go with a 5-year. We called it 5 to 7, just in case we couldn't finish in 5. But the good news is we are on track to finish within 5 years. And as we can see in this slide, in 2023, we went through zones 9, 10, 11, 12. In 2024, we completed zones 5, 6, 7, 8. And this year, we're going to be completing zones 15, 16, 17, 18. And next year, our goal is to complete 8 zones, actually. So very ambitious. This is going to be our next project, is zones 15 through 18. I will walk you quickly through our design process and construction. And so basically we identified the streets that are in a poor and very poor condition. We perform site visits to confirm those conditions, and we take inventory of any other item that may be required in need of a repair, such as the concrete items of curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and pedestrian curb ramps. Next, we prepare the plans, specifications, and cost estimates, and advertise the project publicly, and select the lowest responsive and responsible contractor, and then start the project. So this is the actual project location map from our upcoming project in the Hillside area, which is west of Amherst Drive. So once the contractor is selected and the notice to proceed is issued, they start with the notifications, they install no parking signs, and start implementing BMP's best management practices by covering the catch basins or any openings or drains to our storm drain system. And then concrete work is scheduled. In this slide, we can see curb reconstruction and alley approach reconstruction work, and cross-gutter reconstruction work. I'm including this just to show that some locations can be complex, and this cross-gutter required traffic control on both streets, and we are constructing it 1/2 at a time to provide access to the side streets, so we have 1 lane open in each direction. With concrete work comes unforeseen conditions, and we run into shallow pipes that shouldn't be there, should be deeper. We have root issues that we need to take care of. And we also upgrade our substandard pedestrian curb ramps and with the blue truncated domes. Utility coordination is a critical part of our projects, and we work very closely with our utility companies to make sure that they install their pipelines, facilities, first before we pave, so that they don't come and cut into our new pavement. And this is a great example to go over is you can see two trenches. On the left-hand side, there's the Water and Power, Burbank Water and Power's electrical trench work, and that's their substation. And on the right-hand side, it's Burbank Water and Power's water line. So Public Works and Burbank Water and Power coordinating closely. So they completed their work, installed their pipelines and conduits, and base paved their trenches, and then we repaved the entire street. And with coordinations and cooperative work, we also work with neighboring cities. So this is work at the limit line at the city of Glendale. And as we can see, there is substandard crosswalks, there is substandard curb ramps, traffic signals, and very poor pavement. And working with city of Glendale, we were able to pave the entire area. And this work was done by city of Glendale's contractor. And we can see new high visibility crosswalks, new traffic signals, curb ramps, and new pavement. So after concrete work is completed and obviously all the coordination work has taken place, the contractor schedules the grinding of the existing asphalt pavement, or we call it the cold milling. And in this case, there is a traffic control implemented with one lane open in each direction, and the contractor is working on the outside lanes. And also dust control measures are implemented to minimize dust with sweepers and water trucks. And then comes the paving operation, and again, traffic control is set up in one lane open in each direction to minimize impact to our commuters and residents. And with the paving work, we installed rubberized asphalt, and we make sure that we get a good quality product from the contractor. So we have our inspectors check the temperature of the rubberized asphalt at the time of arrival, and to make sure that it is acceptable and within our specifications limits. And we also perform through geotechnical engineering firm relative density compaction testing, and also asphalt binder content testing to make sure that those limits are also per our project specifications. Next, some streets we do have speed humps, and we construct the speed humps one half at a time to minimize impact and allow for residents to access the street. And then speed humps are tabbed and striped, and pavement markings are installed. And then utility covered adjustments, which include the sewer facilities and water facilities. And then it's time for striping layout work. The layout work is where the subcontractor is gonna lay out the proposed striping lines and markings. And as we can see here, some of the revisions have been done because this layout gets reviewed by our traffic section staff. And they review it, provide comments to the contractor, and it gets revised, and then the final layout is installed. And after layout, traffic loop detectors are installed. And then time for final pavement markings and striping, thermoplastic, and there's two intersections here. One is a four-way stop, and the other one is a signalized intersection, and we install high visibility crosswalks. Two other intersections with high visibility crosswalks at near schools with yellow crosswalks to alert drivers that they're getting into a school zone. And the final product. And Director Bergman mentioned the alleys, and I just included a couple of slides. So we have been picking up some alleys as a pilot in the commercial areas, but there's a lot of foot traffic. And we have also included some residentials. And we are hoping that in 2027, we would be able to address alleys more systematically, similar to what we're doing with our residential streets. Same with preventive maintenance treatments. We're hoping that in 2027, we can implement preventive maintenance measures such as crack sealing or slurry sealing to keep those good streets that are already in a good condition in that same good condition for longer. And this is a few quick slides for our annual arterial street improvement project, which was just completed this month in June at Victory. And we have the Measure P sign. Actually, go back. And then same thing, starting with concrete work, curb ramps, sidewalks, curbs and gutters, driveways, and then cold milling, removing of the existing asphalt with temporary striping, and then the paving operations, and traffic loop installation, and pavement markings and striping work, and then the completed street. Couple of more, and we also included some segments of First Street from Verdugo to Olive, and Alameda Avenue from Lima Street to California Street. So how much is needed going forward? So we looked at a few different budget scenarios and decided on to present these top 3 choices. So budget scenario 1 would be to maintain the same PCI, network PCI of 73, and keeping the alleys at the same location, 44, which would require the same dollar amount of $8 million. Scenario 2 that we analyzed would keep the network PCI at 73, but would increase the alley PCI to 55. And scenario 3 is $5 million. So we would be going from $8 million to $5 million. We would keep the network condition still in the good to very good category with a PCI of 70. And at the same time, we would increase our alley PCI rating to 55. Just going back to this slide, the network PCI for this would be 70, but the streets only PCI would be 72. So it's the combination of the 72 and the 55 that would give us a network PCI of 70. So conclusion, street network right now in a good to very good condition with a PCI rating of 73. And we are recommending to proceed with budget scenario 3, starting in 2027, which would be an investment of $5 million a year, and that would keep our streets in a good condition category, and would also increase our alleys to a 55 pavement condition, which would be at the fair category. And with that, I will open to questions.
Great, thank you. That was a very focused and thoughtful presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. I've got a couple of questions regarding crack sealing versus resurfacing. What is the determination, when does the city decide to crack seal or resurface?
So crack sealing would be when the streets are in that upper end of fair to lower end of good condition, that we could seal those cracks to prevent water from water intrusion, basically. So we would be extending the life of the pavement. So crack sealing is usually for streets that have developed block cracking. So it's just those minor cracks that we would feel, and which would extend the life of that pavement by another 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
With a minimal investment. It's much less expensive to slurry seal, crack seal a roadway to gain 2 or 3 years of life on it. And that's the beauty of where we are in our system now, that we could start considering that minor maintenance type of mode also.
Sure. And then when we are doing projects with neighboring cities, how are we handling that funding? Is the neighboring, since Glendale's contractor did that one portion you showed, did we reimburse the city of Glendale for that work?
Exactly. So it depends on whose contractor is doing the work. For that specific example, the city of Glendale's contractor was doing the work, so they reached out to us, and it took us about 1.5 years or 2 years just to go through the cooperative agreement, plan preparation, making sure we agree on all the items. And For that one, we went to council and awarded that, got the cooperative agreement approved. And when the work was completed, City of Glendale basically sent us a bill, and we paid that amount. And we have done this since then for a few other streets, such as Thurber Place, Chavez, Spazier Avenue, and I believe it was 6th Street that we worked with. And this time, our contractor did the work, and we had also completed a cooperative agreement with Glendale, and this time we sent Glendale an invoice, and they paid our invoice. So it's through cooperative agreements between both cities.
Sure. Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions? Go ahead, please.
Hi, yeah, slide 11, when you talked about the cost, maybe I misunderstood, but is that, I see for keeping it in kind of fair condition, it's like $1 for rehab versus 4 to 5 if you let it go to poor or very poor. Is that representative of per square foot or per square yard, or is that just a percent kind of analysis?
Great question. I think it used to be $1 per square foot a long time ago, and these are maybe an old slide. I think, Vivek, is there a new number for these? No, okay. So those numbers have escalated a little
Okay,
bit.
I was
But
going to say,
I was
that seemed pretty
basically,
inexpensive, yeah.
I was trying to show the multiplication, that it would cost 4 to 5 times more than it would have at that stage.
That's how I understood it, but then when I saw the actual number, I was just curious if that's how inexpensive pavement was. Less than half a cup of coffee. What is the life expectancy that you expect on, say, a residential road?
So the great thing is that Burbank has a really solid subgrade, and we've seen that not just by visually, but through geotechnical investigations, measuring the R value, the resistance value of the soil. And we have streets up on the hillside that have been sitting there for 60, 70 years, and still in a, let's say, a fair condition. So the design elements and the way the engineers design the streets are for like 20 years, but it lasts a lot longer than that. And that's what we're seeing in Burbank.
Great. Well, I think you guys have done a great job because the roads here really are fantastic.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you. I'm excited seeing our PCI is going up, thanks to our Measure P and staff's effort. One question I had regarding the budget of the 5 million or 8 million. That's overall budget you need for your payment management plan implementation, including your soft construction costs, designs, management, or this is only the cost needed for the hard construction activities?
That's a great question. Vivek, can you? Okay. So it includes soft costs? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question, Arvind. The way we do costing is we do total. So include soft costs, contingency, CICM. So we want to club it because we know there's a single pot of money. So we want to take that into account. So the 8 million that showed and the projection is total cost to build it out.
So this 5 or 8 million will be translated. Any method that you choose will be translated into our next year CIP list, kind of.
Yeah, to answer the future, so based on this new pavement management report, that is what we would bring to you annually on a forecast of this is the CIP for our paving, for our residential, for our arterial now, and then the projection of the next few years we would be sharing with you.
Great. And last question. Do you know the total fix-all budget for the payment management plan?
Total fix-all, do you know? For everything, the entire network? That's what the question is, for the entire
Yes.
network?
What's the contractual cost of NCE's work? Is that?
No. The fix-all scenario, that if you, let's say you want to fix all the roads at the same time.
51 million, right? That's the deferred maintenance? So 63 million.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Gilmore, any questions?
How did you know? Thank you again for the, just echoing the sentiments of the other board members. Really good job. It's really noticeable when you're out on the streets, and well done to everyone for putting just, I really admire the way the methodology rolls through on prioritizing things and getting things delivered. So well done.
Thank you.
And just a note on Board Member Hofmeister's question, we're very lucky that the subgrade and the subbase is stable here, and we have people behind us to thank for that. So I think that's a call to action for us to make sure that we kind of continue that lineage of doing a good job for the people who take over from us. So something to keep in mind. I have a question just regarding pages 64 and 65, the two budget scenarios. I'm just struggling a little bit to understand. Scenario 1 shows a network PCI of 73. So does scenario 2. The alley PCI in scenario 1 is 44. In scenario 2, it's 55. So just intuitively, I'd say, you get a better quality outcome from scenario 2, but it's $500,000 less than scenario 1. I can't figure out why there's the difference between 1 and 2.
Sure. So, great question. For scenario 1, the network remains 73, but the streets alone would be at a 76, and the alleys would remain at a 44. So there is more funds being put toward the streets.
Got it.
And in scenario 2, the streets only PCI would drop to 75, and then alleys would go up to 55, because alley improvement work would require, let's say, a less amount of grinding and milling versus a 2.5-inch street. Alleys we normally can do 1.5 inches. So
That makes perfect sense. Thank you. One last question. In your presentation, did you sort of put forward a preferred alternative between the three scenarios, or is this sort of just scenarios for now?
we would be actually recommending scenario 3,
Okay.
which would, right? And which is $5 million, and that would release basically $3 million from our paving annual budgets, which most of it is, of that $3 million is, I believe, Measure P dollars. That could be used toward other Measure P projects.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is Lifan, city engineer. So, the reason that we recommend the third scenario for $5 million, because we are not just looking at pavement. We're looking at the entire city's CIP needs, all the big projects that coming down the pipeline, as well as all the infrastructures. So now that we are able to bring the street condition to a good, to very good condition, and now it's, that gives us a chance to step back and allow the funding to be used on the more urgent lead, and as well as some of the bigger projects. We need to figure out how to finance those as well. So that is the overall thinking. It's not just have a very narrow point of view, just looking at the street. So that's why we are recommending 5.
Thank you very much for elaborating on that. Just to, as an extension of that, if I may, there's a lot of development happening in Burbank, which is great. I think we can mostly agree on that. Is there typically an obligation to the developer to improve their street frontage at the end of their projects, and is that offset from what you would typically budget?
Yes, that's very standard for us, for any development, to improve the frontage, sidewalk, ramps, as well as the pavement. So it's a standard practice for us to request that as condition of approval.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, and the streets are great, and the work is great. Thank you very much. And thank you for explaining the rationale for the recommendation of 3. That was my question as well. So one more little different question. one of the photos that you showed of a sidewalk disassembled and then the tree roots and things, like, what is the overall approach to trees? And do you coordinate with the forestry department and Parks and Recreation? Like, do you ever, what happens when you encounter roots like that?
So we inform our forestry for tree roots that are 2 inches or larger, and their staff supervisor goes out and provides recommendations to the contractor to how to address it.
So what are the options of 2 inches and larger?
When we encounter roots at 2 inches larger, to reiterate what Arden said, there is a licensed arborist that comes out from our Parks and Recreation Forestry and recommends what we need to do to the contractor.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I have a few questions. If you could just clarify for me, the budget of $5 million, is that something that was approved by City Council, or is that something that's going to be coming up?
So on an annual basis, the first board that gets to see our recommendations every year for the capital projects is this Infrastructure Oversight Board, and that goes to council for approval as part of that annual budget process and the CIP presentation that the Public Works Director provides.
Okay, so this will be part of a future budget discussion.
Right, so this pavement management report sets the table for our next 5 years that you will see coming up in next, typically February, March, when we go through the CIP budget preparation stages with you.
Okay. As a layperson, I'm just curious on the ratings between good and very good. What, in a real way, is the difference between a 73 and a 100 in terms of just someone who lives in the city?
Sure. So 100 would be a street that's recently paved, and it depends on the location as well. Some streets have a lot of trees and a lot of tree canopy that actually protects the pavement, and the street that gets paved in that street may remain in the high 90s for 5, 6, 7 years, versus a street that doesn't have any trees and or very fewer trees, and which could be deteriorating at a faster rate. And as the PCI rating deteriorates, you can start seeing longitudinal cracks and block crackings. So you will be able to differentiate between a higher, very good category street versus a kind of a somewhat of a good category street.
Okay, and so as a goal, in terms of a general rating for the streets, the most realistic rating would be the 73. And to say to people, well, if we want us to do an 85 or a 90 or so on, it's going to cost this much more money. That would be the kind of the situation.
Correct, yeah. And this, what the budget scenario 3 is proposing is to have a good balance of also increasing our alley condition ratings, because a lot of our alleys are in a very poor condition.
Right. Something that I wanted to bring up, and Board Member Gilmore kind of referred to it, we have development, we have a lot of things changing, and so traffic patterns will change. We know that, people's commute changes, or we have more industry in one area, or more people living in a certain area. So in terms of your pavement management plan, how are you able to work in these different scenarios as these developments open, as new industries come in or cut back, as we've seen with the entertainment industry? So there's a lot of ebb and flow, and how are you able to incorporate that?
So I'm seeing the city engineer ready to answer, but I can provide an answer. And so we somewhat already have a built-in system to the streets. So let's say the arterial streets already have that traffic index that I mentioned accounted for. So their arterial street sections are much thicker than our residential. So the arterials can be 10 inches or 12 inches thick, which is a much better structural section and can withstand all those heavier trucks. But to answer your question, any developments are going to be conditioned to repair any damages that they leave behind.
But this is more for as the years go by and traffic patterns change. For example, my street that I live on is west of Hollywood Way, and so a lot of people take that residential street as a shortcut to get to the studios or wherever, as opposed to the, so that, and if, let's say, if some of that traffic ebbs down, then my street won't have as much wear and tear. But if there's more activity, then it could go, so there's an ebb and flow that happens that's beyond our control, that are other elements out there. So I'm just kind of curious how that's built into your programming.
So this is Lifan. So there's a multiple forces at work here. So for the payment management plan, what we're looking at is from a maintenance, a road condition point of view. So we recommend that, but that's not necessarily the final product yet, because at the same time, the city also has a complete street plan, and also the city is in the middle of developing our local roadway safety plan, the equivalent. So I think the name the working title is Safe Road Burbank Action Plan, Safe Street Burbank. The CDD Transportation is currently collaborate with Public Works. We'll probably bring that to council in the next couple of months. So once we have all those, and we'll look at how those plans overlap and incorporate certain elements from those plan into our future street project. So it's a dynamic process that constantly evolving, as you see, because the pattern may change. We recommend one thing today, and that could 3 years from now there may be a better option.
And Chair Besson and board members, I think I'd like to add, one of the key elements of just how we do our pavement management is that we do this every 5 years. So whatever changes are out there, they would have to be very significant to really alter our forecast of, say, let's spend $5 million over the next 5 years annually. And if it happens, it'll show up in those windshield surveys and the physical surveys that we see on all of our roadways. And I'd also add one of the things that Mr. Hsu and his team do that is so critical, and probably every director, every city engineer would say, the biggest impact on our streets are utilities. When you cut into a pavement, you're allowing just water and things to get into that pavement. That's really a big deterioration factor. What we do is coordinate with the utilities, and that was Mr. Megadician's slide where we coordinate with we say, here is our plan for the next couple of years, few years, what's your plan? And we layer them and say, all right, well, you have to get in here and do your work by this year because we're going to pave it. And we have a paving moratorium where if they cut into our street, and there are times that happens out of emergencies, they have to repave potentially the entire width of that street. So it's in their best interest, which is in our citizenry's interest, to minimize costs and get in and make sure they're all done with their work, and then we come and put our beautiful pavement over it. So we do all these things, trying to do our best to make it the most efficient, effective program possible with our partners.
Okay. Do you ever use data from the traffic, all the traffic monitoring and to forecast?
We don't use the transportation management centers, data or cameras. I think the biggest thing that Arden and I think LaFawn mentioned, the traffic index, meaning in simple terms, what are the weight of the combined, all vehicles that are traveling over this road? Residential is light, probably the heaviest things are trash trucks, probably, and then the arterials have, you know, anything from delivery trucks to our haul routes with construction vehicles or big transportation, 18-wheeler semis. That's the traffic input that goes into how we forecast how much paving design and work we need to go forward.
Okay, thank you. Those were all my questions. Anyone have any additional questions? Go ahead.
I'm looking at the budget request that we had for the fiscal year 2025-26. There is 1.4 million request for annual sidewalk, 3.5 for annual residential, and 0 for arterial programs. So the sum of these three funds will be the total of 5 million, or any of the scenarios that we pick, or how are you gonna translate that funds into the budget request for the next fiscal year?
Yes, so to answer your question, so remember when this was brought to the board, we have yet to finish the future 5-year plan yet. So at the time, it's taking into consideration of the projects we still have to finish, which is we have about 22 million of projects still on the book that's been budgeted in the past year that's still waiting to be done. So that is the decision to look at both the budget and the workload. So that's why we come up with 3.5 and for the roadway, and then 1.4 for the sidewalk. So that is a consideration of of the past 5 years plan. That's the accumulated result of that. And then what we present today is assuming all the work will be done, and then to look forward to the next 5 years.
So it's going to differ depending on how the projects that you have currently in hand will finish before the fiscal year begins.
Right, correct. So, and we are basically scheduled to catch up to all the works in the past within the next 12 to 18 months. So that all the backlog will be behind us at that point.
That's great. Thank you.
So I noticed in the slides there was a few sidewalks included, aprons or approaches and straight lengths. How much percentage-wise annually are we spending on the sidewalks? And is that I assume is coming out of this budget money?
Correct. Currently, I want to say about $1.5 to $2 million annually for concrete items, including sidewalks, curbs and gutters, pedestrian curb ramps. But as we have gone through all of these different zones and completed the repaving, we have picked up all of the curb ramp items, so we've improved those. So next time around, we won't be just reconstructing the curb ramp, it would be just addressing the hazards that are on the sidewalk and any ponding issues at the gutter line or the curbs.
Board Member Wember, I think the question is, in the residential paving project, kind of what percentage of that project is concrete work, or was that answer okay?
Both. That was okay, but I'd be sure. Do we know well, I think you'd answered about 1.5 to 2 million dollar-wise is how much is spent.
We have about 1.4 or 5 annually slated for the annual sidewalk improvement project. The concrete work is important in certain segments of the residential work because the concrete would set the grades, and while the contractor's there, we take advantage of the opportunity that they're their economy of scale to do that work. I would guess maybe it's less than 10% of the total budget for our residential paving that we do of the concrete work. Arden?
Sure, that sounds right. And I was also including the concrete work associated with arterial improvements, which includes the pedestrian curb ramps throughout those arterial stretches.
So this is Lifan. So to answer your question, so the 5 million you're looking at, the sidewalk work will be incidental. So the 5 million is mostly for the street improvement. We have a separate sidewalk item that is not part of this. That's historically, that runs about 1.5 to 2 million, depends on the given year. So the sidewalk, including in the budget here, are relatively small because they are incidental. Because what we are doing is we are combining, a lot of times it's either doing in sequence. In the past, is we beat the take care of the sidewalk first, and then the roadway come next. But in the future, what we think may be more efficient is combine the roadway budget and the sidewalk budget and bid it out as one project. So that would be, what will likely happen in the future. What you see is in a given area, the 5 million budget will be combined with a 1.5 million, 2 million sidewalk budget, and then it bid out. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so the sidewalk is not necessarily a part of the pavement management program. Got it, okay. And so then it would accordingly not impact the PCI.
That's accurate, yes.
Okay, that's it.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Picking up from Board Member Gilmore's questions, kind of these accessory pieces, the sidewalk ramps for disabled access, do those have a comparable lifespan to what? Like, will we need to replace those again in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
That question has really two answers. One is just based on the condition of the ramp. The other, what happened in the last 20 years is the standard for the ramp has changed. So what we did in compliance for the quote 15 years ago would not compliant for the quote today. So what we happen is, when we run into those sessions, we were required by quote to redo those. So and the regulations constantly evolving. If it's a space on condition, concrete are good for 25 years to 50 years. But that is only one measure of that we are looking at.
Thank you. And do those regulations work in a way that, like, grandfather an existing ramp until you do the work around it? Or so is it opportunistic as you're doing a project in that vicinity, or are you required to comply within X months or years?
I think this I think it's more. I think that's where we need the attorney to chime in.
So I can actually answer that. So when I've gone through the DOJ documents, it says whenever there's an alteration to the street, and resurfacing would be an alteration. So slurry seal would not be an alteration, for example, per their definition.
Perfect, thank you.
Terrific questions. Any more? No? Terrific. Great discussion. Really interesting, informative, and optimistic. So thank you so much. I appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
So we move on to introduction of additional agenda items. Anyone have anything to add to a future agenda? No? Okay. In that realm, we have future agenda items of the BRT project update and the semi-annual Measure P revenue report. Any other comments before we adjourn?
Yes, Madam Chair, as we see in the agenda, I want to wish everybody a happy July, a happy summer. As we typically do, we will be dark for the July meeting, and we really look forward to a new board year coming up in August, and on the agenda would be our chair and vice chair nominations and selections. So thank you very much for a great year.
Wonderful, thank you, and thanks to everyone for your hard work and your support of this board. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful July, and we'll see you in August, hopefully, and take care. Thank you, we will adjourn.